Hello, welcome to Hints for Health, a series of podcasts covering areas and issues of concern and interest to global workers and those interested in having optimum health. Join us as we explore topics that affect most of us today and find ways to address potential challenges to your health. So let's join our hosts, Brian and Stephanie Kidman.
Hello. We are Stephanie and Brian Kidman from Compassion Link. Dr. Joanne Butrin asked us to take over Hints for Health. And today we would like to talk to you about how to counteract the attacks that try to bring sickness and disease by building your defense system, or simply put, strengthening your immune system. We wanted you to understand what a huge part your daily decisions make in strengthening your immune system. So we asked Dr. Brian Kidman to explain the basic components of the immune system and how they all work together. Then we will talk about the important roles exercise and sleep have in warding off sickness and disease.
Well, the immune system is complicated, to say the least. I think to understand it in its basic form is helpful because we, over the rest of this session and the next 3 sessions, want to explain ways that you can strengthen your immune system so that it does keep your body free from, or so that it minimizes the effects that various kinds of germs and other things are trying to have on it. So we're going to take you to a diagram here, and we'll walk through how the immune system works in a basic sense, keeping in mind that people go to school for years to become immunologists, which are specialists in the immune system. I want to just explain that the immune system, or our defense system, has really 3 lines of defense. The first line of defense is what we call the barrier defense. So that would be physical barriers. So the lining of our eyes and the tears would be a type of barrier that when something gets in our eye, the immune system actually typically will neutralize it just through the lining of the eye and the tears. Another example would be the lungs. You breathe something in, and the lining of the lungs has certain mucus and other proteins that will diminish the impact or kill off or capture things that attack. Similarly, in the gastrointestinal tract, when something comes in, a bacteria, you've been traveling, you come home with some kind of an illness, it's your immune system that's trying to fend that off. But if something gets through that first barrier, if, for instance, you get a sliver that penetrates your skin being obviously a barrier that your immune system uses to keep you from a lot of things, that sliver gets past that first line of defense, and then the second line of defense kicks in, which is called the innate immune system. In the innate immune system, you have a variety of cells that will actually almost immediately head toward that invading organism and capture it and essentially gobble it up, digest it, and process it so that it never has a chance to replicate itself and make you sick. That's happening all the time in our gastrointestinal tract, respiratory tract, sinuses. It's happening all the time throughout the day. If the organism still is able to resist this second line of defense, which again primarily consists of neutrophils and monocytes, which become macrophages, then these cells will take pieces of this organism that it has captured, and it will present the pieces of that organism, which we call antigens. It will present those antigens to another line of cells. And when it does that, it's entering the adaptive phase or line of defense. Adaptive meaning that the cells in this defense system are essentially like specialized soldiers who study the enemy and learn about their tactics. The first of these specialized cells is called a T cell. T cells develop different types of T cells, one of which is a killer T cell, which immediately goes into combat against this organism. But other types of T cells, one would be a memory T cell, another would be essentially a messenger T cell. The messenger T cell then informs a different type of cell called a B cell about the antigen or the parts of this enemy. And then the B cell is the cell that becomes a plasma cell. Plasma cells then develop antibodies, which I think we've all heard of that word, antibodies against that particular organism, so that not only at that point, but especially in the future, once the body has neutralized that organism on this attack, in the future, it will be these antibodies that help us to immediately identify that organism and immediately neutralize it, because we've seen it before and the defense system has been able to plan for it the next time it comes around. We know that COVID was one of those examples of an organism that essentially the world had not seen, so nobody had immunity against it, and it did a lot of damage. But once you get COVID or once you get a vaccine, then your body has been introduced to the antigen of COVID and has developed antibodies so that then it can fight against it the next time that it arrives on the scene. I want to also switch to a different diagram and explain how we are working toward having a balanced immune system. Let's switch to a different diagram, which I think summarizes what we're after when we're talking about our immune system. What we want is a healthy, balanced immune system. We don't want an immune system that overreacts and becomes too aggressive against a particular organism, doing more damage ultimately to our healthy cells than is necessary. Nor do we want to have a weak immune system that doesn't take care of the problem and the problem lingers in our body. So examples of an overactive immune system would include certain things like asthma or eczema or other allergies, hay fever, chronic sinus infections. Those are related to an allergy or an overreaction that the body is engaged in to a certain organism or a certain chemical or to pollen or whatever it might be. Another example or other types of examples of overreaction of the body would be rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, inflammatory bowel disease, and others where the body appears to be fighting against its own tissues. And many of these things we don't understand why the body does that, whether it's a virus that tips it off and throws it into an unbalanced situation or something else. We just don't know. Examples, of course, of immune systems that are not reacting strong enough and therefore are leaving organisms in the body that continue to do their damage would be certain kinds of cancers where the body just does not kill off the cancer cell, but somehow cancer cell is able to evade the immune system and grow despite us having even sometimes a good diet, exercising. There are certain viruses that, if left unchecked, can lead to cancers. Human papillomavirus, hepatitis virus, HIV. Others can actually cause, over time, cancer. So can certain kinds of bacteria. One of those would be the kind that causes stomach ulcers most of the time. It can actually lead to stomach cancer. Tuberculosis can go unchecked. Shingles can recur in the future. So these are all examples of things that the body's immune system, for whatever reason, is not strong enough or intelligent enough to detect and kill.
But we want to talk about how to strengthen your immune system, and one way is through sleep. Why sleep, you may ask yourself? Studies have shown that people who sleep 9 hours as compared to 7 enhance the ability of the killer T cells to do their work. Thus, they have a better protection against viruses, bacteria, and cancer cells. During deep sleep, stage 4 of the sleep cycle, more T and B cells are released, thus strengthening the armies for any attack. Furthermore, your cortisol levels are reduced when they get adequate sleep. You may recognize cortisol as the stress hormone. It's also essential in the control of inflammation. In fact, sleep regulates several hormones, including leptin, which helps you know when you're full, when you're eating. You can see how all of this ties in for maintaining good health.
Absolutely. Poor sleep results in a lot of other things like increased inflammation, higher blood pressure, resistance to insulin, gaining weight, worsening of heart and blood vessel disease. So all of us can attest, of course, that if we get too little sleep, we tend to be moody. We tend to make mistakes. We have some trouble with memory and judgment. Interestingly, exposure to the blue light on screens on phones, computers, televisions tends to interfere with the release of a hormone called melatonin, which is produced in the brain. That's the body's natural sleep hormone. So, really, we should avoid screens within 2 hours of when we're going to bed to allow the melatonin to be produced in sufficient quantities to help us to get to sleep. Now, infants and kids, children need 14 hours of sleep typically. Teens need 8 to 10 hours, and adults typically 7 to 9, although better if it's closer to the 9 than if it's closer to the 7.
The importance of rest and relaxation has been discussed more in recent years, both in the body of Christ and in medicine in general. The Sabbath rest is a general rest that we take on Sundays, but there's also that mindful relaxation that's going on, that's restoring us physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. During this once-a-week set-apart day of rest, we can meditate on God's goodness, contemplate, and spend time with God. But we can also spend time with friends and family, visit and laugh. And we know from the Word of God that a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. Science also shows that laughter is good, and it triggers endorphins, which relax the body and decrease physical tension for up to 45 minutes. One of the ways we can get better sleep is by exercising during the day, preferably 2 or 3 hours before bedtime. Aerobic activity in which your heart rate increases and stretching both allow you to relax later when you lie down.
Yes, consistent, regular, moderate exercise, and by regular we're talking 4 to 7 days a week, certainly increases the strength of the immune system. It's interesting that when you exercise, the muscles that you use in the exercise become temporarily inflamed, but that's good because that results in a stimulation of T regulator cells that then reduce general inflammation in the body later. Moderate exercise also increases something called cytokines, which are like messengers, chemical messengers that stimulate the immune reaction to counter infections. And exercise increases oxygenation of tissues and strengthens the cardiovascular system.
I'm sure you've noticed that when you're coming down with a cold or your allergies are beginning to bother you, your lymph nodes start getting swollen and tender. The lymph nodes are part of the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system has a crucial role in removing waste like bacteria, viruses, toxin, and abnormal cells that can lead to cancer. Every step you take helps the lymphatic system do its job. The increased activity improves lymphatic flow, bringing bacteria and viruses to the lymph nodes where they are killed by white blood cells. And when you perspire, toxins and cellular waste are removed. Dr. Colbert writes in his book, The 7 Pillars of Health, that aerobic activity can triple the rate of lymphatic flow. So you are helping your body rid itself of bacteria, viruses, and toxin at a much greater rate and more effectively. Anytime you can take the stairs instead of the elevator or park the car further away from the door and walk will improve your health. Small increments of change that you plan for can make a big difference in your overall health.
A good exercise goal is 20 to 30 minutes daily of moderate exercise. Now, examples of moderate exercise would include a brisk walk, steady cycling, jogging, swimming, light hiking.
If a daily walk is not part of your present routine, I encourage you to schedule it into your daily routine. If some days don't allow a 30-minute walk, you can take 3 10-minute walks. And having someone take the walk with you will increase your likelihood of accomplishing this goal and probably make it more enjoyable. We have more to share with you in how to strengthen your immune system, but for now we leave you with the words, 3 John 2. Beloved, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers.
Thanks for listening to Hints for Health today. Join us again in the future for this series of podcasts that will help you in your goal of optimum health. This series is created and produced by Compassion Link, an Assemblies of God World Missions International ministry. I'm your host, Neil Ruda. For more information, visit www.compassionlink.org/hints for health. and follow us on social media. God bless you.